So this particular book came out of a workshop that when I presented a paper, a very initial paper that was published in the Economic Reporter Weekly. The workshop was in Leicester. And the organizer of the workshop, whose name was Professor Tony Payne, liked the paper and asked me that would I be interested in thinking about a book with Sabyaschi. At that time, our initial response was, no way, because we were both very busy with the overall work we were doing in this program. Then we thought about it and we felt, why not give it a shot, especially because Tony said it could be a very short book. And so that was when we started thinking about the book.
I think the bigger perspective of this book is that around that time, India was grappling with this growth slowdown. And it seemed to us that nobody really had a good answer to why that was happening. There was a lot of talk about policy paralysis, but policy paralysis seemed to be something that was out of the blue. Nobody understood how that was related to the whole process of growth that has been happening before that. And coming from our background, the political economy analysis, we knew exactly what was happening. We had an answer.
So I enjoyed the book very much. I tend to read a lot of books in economics. I tend not to read books in political science, not because of any good reason, but simply because I tend to read books in economics. So this was a whole new language for me. Rent-pick sectors, magicians, and a variety of words and phrases that I hadn't come across before.
What's also interesting in the book is that even as it offers a historical perspective, a contemporary historical perspective, it seeks to provide you certain theoretical tools to look ahead and to anticipate what could happen. The interplay between business and politics, the way in which a variety of factors come into play when you look at the working of the country.
I think what delineates the book from other treatments in the literature is that usually we think of institutions being the long-run underpinning of growth, but here they try and think of institutional change as even leading to short-run changes.
And fixing weak institutions is not about reforms, it's not about changing rules and regulations, it's about fixing, in a sense, the politics and fixing the kind of way economic actors, firms, households who are engaged in productive activities interact with the political elites and the bureaucrats.
People are used to analyzing growth, understanding growth in a certain way, and that's not the political analysis of growth. So we had to start from scratch, and we were helped a lot by some other work that we do with Professor Lon Pritchett of Harvard. And we started using that framework and building on that, because India as a country has much more complex structures, and we soon had an alternative analysis of growth that could explain the things that were happening. Unfortunately, people continue to see it in terms of the growth theory and growth analysis that they used to. And it took a lot of time to convince them that they need to look at it differently.
It goes beyond theory and it seeks to explain in that bigger theoretical context actual examples of what has happened in the recent past.
And I think that's something that the readers can relate to, and that's helped our work, getting over this challenge as well.
Understanding episodic growth in developing countries is a useful way to organize its growth history, because developing countries and EMEs take growth transitions and face transitions. And therefore it's important not only from the standpoint of how to get into a high growth episode, but once you are there, how do you stay in it? And so they identify 2 high growth episodes, and in their 3rd growth episode, it's still open as to whether we can stay in it or not. But I think that's a useful way to think about India's growth episodes, because many countries, for instance, if you even look at developing countries that have transitioned to middle-income countries, and once they've been there, they've not been able to transition to high income countries. So that's also a phase of growth, but that are longer. Here we're looking at it in terms of mapping these growth episodes, but with some underlying institutional story. So I think that's new and nice. Yeah.
The authors have rightly stressed on what has influenced deals in India and how politicians who've been in positions of power and authority and bureaucrats who worked under them, how they have interacted with corporate captains, the heads of business houses, and the way in which this relationship has resulted in the conclusion of actual deals, whether these be for large infrastructure projects or for the manner in which, say, natural resources in this country have been allotted, some would say misallocated, priced, some would say mispriced. So that's what they find, and I think as two economists who are looking into the working of the political economy of India have examined is the kind of deals, the ones which are structured, the ones which are not structured, why they've been structured in the way they have and why they haven't. And all of that, all the different kinds of deals and the nature of the relationships between big business and politics with the bureaucracy in it, how these influence investment patterns, how they have the wider ramifications of these relationships and this nexus on the working of the political economy of this country.
I think it's really a reflection of sectors, and where, as the book argues, the sectors that prospered in the 90s were sectors where rent seeking was much less feasible, and they tended to be much more competitive businesses. The sectors that prospered, as they show in the 2000s, were sectors where there was much more of a connection with a needed connection with the government. And I think that's something that we can take away and learn. That, when governments reform, they reform. What does reform mean? Reform means that you move in the direction of using markets to a greater extent. You move in the direction where individual choices determine what people get, as opposed to someone deciding that this is what they should get. So you move to a regime of user charges, for example. You move to a regime of universal basic income, as opposed to providing subsidies in kind. So I think moving in that direction, moving to a regime where one trusts in individual decision making, whether it's a person or a firm, and where the power of the market and the discipline of the market is constantly there to ensure that things are equitable and things are fair. I think that is the direction that we need to keep going, and that's what reform involves. That's what we saw happen in the 90s. That's what, to some extent, we moved away from in the 2000s. And we need to get back in a big way to that kind of a focus on what reform involves, whether at the individual level or at the firm level. And by the way, whether industry likes it or not, one should have competitive markets. Whether industry likes it or not, one should have the discipline of competition and the market. And if enough local competition isn't there, provide foreign competition. Because that's a very good way of ensuring that firms do a really good job.
Well, I would say that this book, in a sense, is an entry point. It's an entry point to many research questions. We want to take up small parts or specific parts of our argument and do more research to throw light on some of these issues. And I think that will keep us busy for the next 3 to 5 years.
And I think there's also this question that people are asking us, which we have been asked already, is the so what question. So what can we tell policy analysts? What can we tell policy makers? What we can tell the media? What can we tell the general society in terms of what they can hope to see in terms of actually seeing economic growth recover in India? And so I think we need to think more carefully about the policy messages from our research. I don't think we've got there yet. I think we need to think much more carefully about specific policy messages that can be practical and operational to the policymakers. And I think the next stage of the is also to think not just the research, but the policy side of what we've done.